Troy Kearns, real estate investor, bringing it to you on the podcast from the Troy Kearns channel, where we talk about all things real estate, business, and entrepreneurship. And we have a very special guest today, Denis. He is a politician in Nevada. He is a friend of mine. I would consider he's been a great guy. He's just a great guy. He's a Democrat. I tend to vote Republican, but I vote just generally what makes common sense. And Mo is a common sense guy, and he's a really good guy. And I felt that, when you're navigating the worlds of real estate business and entrepreneurship, you're going to run right into politics. And you're going to run into obstacles. And it's not what you know, it's who you know. And Mo is a fantastic guy. He has a real estate license. He's a computer guy. He's an investor. I've been to his primary residence. He's got investment properties. And he has shaped the Nevada legislature for how many years, Mo?
Almost 17. 17 years.
So, Mo, at this point in time, I'd like you to introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm son of Cuban immigrants. So my parents came here to this country looking for something better for our family. Born in Brooklyn, but we moved around a lot until I was 6 years old. Actually, we lived in Miami, we lived in Arlington, Virginia, we were in New York, we even came out west for a few months and went back to Miami, and all of that. And then when I turned 6, we actually moved to Las Vegas and stayed here pretty much the rest of my life. I've been here. I've been gone for a few years here and there.
Where'd you go?
So, when I was in 5th and 6th grade, elementary school, we actually moved to Salt Lake City.
Okay.
My family converted to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints when I was 7. And my parents wanted to move up to Utah to be closer to, the church. But we were there for 2 years and came back. My dad worked at the Sands Hotel until he retired. He was a room service waiter.
Okay.
And when we moved back from Salt Lake, we never ever moved again. My parents bought a house. In fact, the house is still in the family. And I actually don't live too far from there. I've actually stayed in that same neighborhood because I wanted to raise my kids there. I thought it was a good opportunity for them to I wanted them to see the world as it is and grow up in a diverse world and see, all the different things. So we lived there, and the other time I was away was to go to school. I went to Brigham Young University, studied music. Actually, ultimately ended up getting a degree in music with vocal emphasis. So my major was.
So are you a good singer?
I can sing.
Can I drop a little bit on you? Can you throw something out right now? Are you good like that?
What did that?
I just want to hear your voice. I didn't even know you sang.
Well,
if you want to warm up to it later, we could do it. But I think if that'd be awesome. I didn't know you were a singer.
Yeah. So,
I grew up in my whole family is in the theatrical business. I was the spotlight operator. So I didn't ever have that gene, right? But that's a talent, that's for sure. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I actually I've worked on the backside of it too. When I was in college going to school for vocal music, I actually worked as a stage tech. So I've seen both sides of the stage. And I guess I need to think about what I want to sing. I also do some beatboxing, so we could.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I think that would be, if you could do a cappella into beatboxing, we'd have a heck of a show here.
And also I should say my kids are all musicians. My wife's a musician. So actually we've probably done more vocal stuff lately because we all play instruments also.
So what instrument do you play?
So I started out on percussion, then learned the piano, guitar, bass guitar.
So you could play everything.
So all the rhythm stuff in a band, like a rock band, that kind of thing. Although I have played in a bluegrass band, I've been in a 50s rock band, as well as just a regular rock band. In fact, with my family, we all sing parts and we do a cappella. And
so you're very comfortable singing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So we just got to figure out what you're going to sing, and you're good.
Yeah, I do all different styles of music, but probably we could do maybe like Frank Sinatra.
Ooh. Sing some Frank. I want to hear it.
Let's see. Tell me what's your favorite Frank Sinatra song?
Luck Be a Lady? That's a tough one, though.
Yeah, I got to have the words to that one.
Luck be a lady tonight. Luck if you want to have... I can't sing worth shit. You figure it out. Let's see. What else is there?
My Way.
What?
My Way.
My Way?
Yeah,
I did it my way.
Yeah, so I need. I got to remember the thing.
Here, let's get our iTunes. We're in technology.
Let
me get it. Let me get it queued up for you. Hold on. My way.
And now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. My friend, I'll say it clear, I'll state my case, of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full. I traveled each and every highway, and more, much more than this, I did it my way.
You're awesome, dude. That's
There
awesome, dude. Give it up to Mo Denis. That is cool. Like, that was not expected. I didn't even know. When you said you sing, I was like, all right, if he sings, we're getting that right now. That is awesome. Thank you. That's delightful. Thank you for that. That was cool.
Yeah.
That has been my whole encounter with you. You've just been like a gracious, cool guy that is working to help the citizens of Nevada. And I want to talk, right before we went into that little offbeat thing, you were mentioning that you wanted to raise your children where you grew up and to be in a diverse environment, which I'm a very big fan of, right? Right now we're living in the middle of Kansas City, like in a really diverse area. Yeah. And I think that, you got to have your kids in the world you're in. But, a lot of these politicians, they get a bad reputation for like being hypocrites, right? Living in one place, in a place that they service on. But you are, for those of you guys who don't know Las Vegas, he is very much in the thick of it, okay? Mo lives in a neighborhood that is a busy neighborhood, an area that I've had rental properties on the same street.
Right.
I would say it is a working class neighborhood, and it is a high rent neighborhood.
Right.
And you are a man who does what he says. He's in the neighborhood. He's not going home to his guard-gated castle.
Right.
So that is something that was impressive for me from day one.
Yeah, well, I think that's important. For me, public service has been a real good thing, and rather than spend my money and time in, just doing everything that I want to do, I felt like I've been really blessed, and so I've tried to give back. And we don't have these huge needs. We'd rather live simply and be able to use our resources for other things, to really benefit other people. I have 5 kids. All my kids are grown now. So my youngest is 19, my oldest is 36. And I now
You're dating yourself. I don't even know how old you are.
Right. Yeah. I just turned 60. So.
Well, you look good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah.
I would have think like mid-50s at best.
Yeah, well, I don't smoke or drink or, I'd say some of that stuff that kind of ages you sometimes,
Well, it usually does, yeah. If it's habitual, for sure.
Right. I have 7 grandkids now. I have 6 grandsons, and we just finally had a granddaughter 2 weeks ago. And so it's going to be amazing to see what a granddaughter's like after having 6 grandsons. So
wow.
And my wife and I have been married for, I think, 38 years, going on 39. So
you said before, you mentioned it, you're a Latter-day Saint, which is commonly referred to as a Mormon.
Yeah.
And is Mormon a bad term? Is Latter-day Saint the preferred term?
Yeah, actually, the preferred term is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Church of Jesus Christ, or the emphasis is that we believe in Jesus Christ, and so we're members of his church. And so generally, a lot of times when people use the word Mormon, they refer to, we have a book of scripture called the Book of Mormon, and because we use that, some people will use, Book of Mormon. So
interesting fact, and I'm sure you know this, but Las Vegas was founded as a fort for the Mormon church, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, yeah, I mean, the church had a fort here, and actually we have a recreation of it, down
up on Charleston.
Yeah, on Las Vegas Boulevard and Washington.
Okay.
Yeah, they were only here for a short period. I mean, just a few years.
But like in the 1880s, if I remember.
Yeah, in the mid to whatever 80s, and and they were here and left. So they basically came and then they were gone. But Vegas was also, because there was water here, was also a stop along the Spanish Trail. There's in fact, the Spanish Trail ran right by that on Las Vegas Boulevard in Washington.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, they used to have a little plaque there that said, Spanish Trail came through here.
So you've been in Las Vegas pretty much your whole life since you were 6 years old, and you have a breadth of experience So when did you get into politics? And a noteworthy mention, who's your cousin?
Yeah, so I have my mom had 8 sisters, or 7 sisters, including her, but one died early. So one of my mom's sisters is Marco Rubio's mother. So Marco Rubio is my first cousin. So he's also a politician, but he's just in Florida, and I'm here.
That's interesting. And your full name is, you go by Mo, but your full name is Moses?
It's Moisés.
Moisés.
Which is Moses in Spanish.
And habla español?
Sí, cómo no.
Bueno, está bien.
Desde niño hablo español.
Sí.
Y también viví en Uruguay. So I one of my other things that I did, I was a missionary in Uruguay, down in South America, in Montevideo.
That is one thing that the Mormon church has figured out better than anybody else. If you're going to get your people to buy into your church, put them on a mission. You're going to teach them some great sales skills. You're going to have them sell religion door to door. And a lot of the people that I met who speak a different language, whether it's, I've got a good friend, Mike Olson, who owns a law firm here in town. He speaks Cantonese. Why? Because he went on a Mormon mission in China.
Right. And
I got another buddy, Chris Clements, Mormon guy out here, speaks Spanish because he went on a mission to Argentina. And you went on a mission to where?
Uruguay, which is right next door to Argentina and Brazil.
Wow. And so that's how you picked up Spanish?
No, we spoke Spanish at home. I learned Spanish first. I learned English. I didn't learn English until I started school.
And you were born in New York, so your parents first moved to New York?
Yeah, they first moved to New York, and we were living in Brooklyn when I was born.
Okay, so fast forward, you grow up, you go to college, you do your mission. When does Mo Denis get involved in politics, and why does Mo Denis get involved in politics?
So part of that, back up, I was also a Boy Scout growing up, and actually been involved with the Boy Scouts since I was 8 years old, and an Eagle Scout.
Great organization. I was a Cub Scout.
Oh yeah, there you go. And so I became an Eagle Scout just as I turned 14, and the things that I learned there, plus what I was learning in church. And then a really good government teacher my senior year of high school just really inspired me to always be involved and know what's going on in the community, and to possibly, if I had an opportunity to do something at some point, to not be scared to do that, but to step up. And I think the thing that I learned the most was, if you're going to complain about something, then you better be willing to do something about it. Right. And you can't just complain and not. And so, I got involved when my kids were really young. I got involved. I was obviously involved in my church, and I also got involved in the local community with some nonprofits. When my daughter, that's 36 now, when she started kindergarten, I went to school, and the PTA was there, and same thing. I couldn't complain about the school if I wasn't willing to do something, and so I got involved and. With the Parent Teacher Association, the PTA. I volunteered to be over the membership. They said, they didn't have very many members. They had like 30 members or something. Right. And I couldn't complain about the fact that unless I was willing to do something. So I said, hey, I think I can get more than that. We had the 2 years that I was president, I actually had the membership chair. We went from 20 to 200. Wow. And never had less than 200. I became the president after that at the school. Never had less than like 175 people at every meeting that we were.
So your political career started at the PTA,
right? PTA, and then I got appointed to the library board while I was doing PTA in the local library board here, which actually has been Library of the Year for the whole country. At some point, we built 11 new libraries during the time that I was on the board.
I've seen a few of them. They're gorgeous. I actually put one of them on my Instagram, the one on Warm Springs, I think it is. It's like a brand new one. It looks like a fort. I think it's the administration building.
Oh, the one out here in the Southwest.
Yes.
Correct, yes. That one was built right after I got off the board. And but it's an amazing library system. The education in my kids is important. I got involved in the PTA because I want to make education better. Actually, originally for my daughter, right? And then I realized, hey, if I'm going to make it better for her, I need to make it better for every kid, because that's the world that she's going to live in. For sure, right? And in the libraries, that's just being a Latino kid growing up. I couldn't go to Europe. I couldn't go to space. I couldn't. But I could go to the library. And I could transport myself.
This was before YouTube. This is before the internet.
Right, just with books. Right?
Just with books.
You go to the library. That's one place. It was free. You could go. You could learn. And really,
I spent a lot of time in the library growing up, so I can identify with that for sure.
So that inspired me. And the Las Vegas City Council, my City Councilman asked me me if I was interested in serving on the library board. And I said, yeah. And I actually knew what a library board trustee was. I don't know why.
What is it?
So they have a board that's in charge, kind of like a city council, that's in charge of the library. And the library district has 11 members, and they are in charge of, I think, a $60 or $70 million annual budget. That and the policy for the library. And so I wanted to be involved. Actually, it was first Latino actually to serve on the board. And served for 8 years, ended up serving as the chairman of the board. And we made a lot of changes during that time period. But, I really appreciated that. And between that and the PTA, I learned about, it wasn't just what we were doing, but that, the legislature also was doing things that impacted us.
Right.
And
so you're having to zig and zag in your position as the library trustee.
Right.
And you're going, oh, wait, this is affecting me too.
Right.
Okay.
And same thing with PTA. Education. I want to make education better. And, I can help at my school. But if I truly wanted to help all kids, the stuff that the legislature does, that impacts the budget for education. It impacts policies that are put in place. And so we would go to the legislature and, advocate for those kind of things. So I realized how important the legislature was in that aspect.
And I think that's important. I think if you're listening to the show right now, definitely comment, definitely let us know what you think about the legislature, what you think about politics. If you're involved in politics or if you plan on getting involved in politics, they always say politics is local. I think that you would agree on that. There is some, Fed kind of has overreach. The Fed has dollars that they give local municipalities, that they give local governments, but really everything starts on the local organization. So I know the cool thing about Mo is he's going to show us behind the curtain of what happens in the legislature. So from the library, you go into what?
So I was also serving at tail end of that with the City of Las Vegas Community Development Block Grants, which provides HUD grants to nonprofits in at-risk areas, so areas that have been designated that they need extra help.
So real quick, for those real estate investors out there, grants are free money, and HUD is a good company to work with if you want free money for low-income areas.
Yeah, so that's the Housing and Urban Development, for the federal government. And they give money to not only for programs, so like, senior programs or kid youth programs, or it's a wide range, and even some health things could be used for. They also have money that they use to build real estate properties, to build housing.
LIHTC, you're talking about stuff like that, like the LIHTC credits?
Right, yes, yeah. And so, and it's similar to that, but these are actual HUD, they call them home grants, which builds like, I think they call them home grants, which builds like, I know we have several of them in our community here, apartment complexes that have, 3 floors, and they're really nice. They use HUD funding to do a lot of that type of thing.
And since this is a real estate investment show, we're going to mention that a grant is the best kind of loan to borrow because you don't pay it back. It's given to you as long as you fulfill your obligations of the grant, and usually they're long year leases, like 30 years usually. And if you fill that obligation of the grant, that money is forgiven and you don't have to pay it back. And the grants are there to fix what the government can't. The grant is there for the private sector to go and fill that need, whether it's a non-for-profit company or whether it's a for-profit company. It's just a different LLC, just a different election. But they generally like to see non-for-profit companies get those types of grants.
Right. So, so between all of that experience and, I finally decided, hey, I'm tired of being on this side of the table. I want to be on that other side of the table, right? To actually help make the decision.
For sure.
In the musical Hamilton, he talks about being in the room where it happens, right? I wanted to be there because that's where, really things really happen. And so I decided to run. The legislature created some seats. They wanted to get some more diversity. So I decided to run for the one that I lived in, for the Nevada Assembly. So it was an open seat, supposed to be an open seat, and ended up that the way it worked out is the person that was there got moved into a different district. She moved back, and so I ended up actually having to run against an incumbent that first time.
And an incumbent is what, for those who don't know?
So incumbent is a person that's currently serving in the position.
Got it.
And normally I wouldn't necessarily run against an incumbent unless I really didn't like what they were doing. Then by all means, people should run if you don't like what your representative's doing, and you have an interest in running, run against them or find somebody to run against them. And but in this case, I really didn't have anything against this particular person. The problem was she moved back into the district after I was several $1,000s into a campaign.
You were pot committed.
And so I had to, so I was going to continue on and actually ran a great race and got to meet some good people. But at the end of the day, I ended up losing by 62 votes.
So how'd you deal with the failure? And it's 62 votes. That had to hurt a little bit.
Right. Yeah. Especially when the number of hours that I put in and the amount of money you have to raise, even though I only raised half as much as the other person, that's just all things that you do, but you got to meet a lot of people and good things. But it was really tough. But at the same time, I said I was going to do something. I did my part. Right now I can go on with life. Right after that, I actually was asked to serve as a bishop in my church. So I thought, things were...
What's a bishop? I hear that term often. I know that's like a higher up person in the church.
Yeah. So in my church, a bishop is the lay leader of a congregation. So I had, 500 members.
So would that be the whole church as the congregation?
So in our church, congregations are done by region or geographically. So like a specific area of town, that's a congregation that we call a ward.
Okay.
And so the bishop is over that ward, and he's the leader. He's got other people that do other things. So I got called to serve in that position, and I thought I was done with politics and would do that.
So you thought you had a higher calling.
Right. And which I did. But 2 years later, what happened was the person that was serving, she decided to run for county commission. So she left the seat open. Because I had just run a year and a half before, and I had great name recognition and all that, I was convinced to try to run again. And actually, the second time I actually won overwhelmingly in that race. And so I got elected to the Nevada Assembly, which I ended up serving 6 years in Nevada Assembly. Concurrently, while being a bishop, for 5 of those years, I was a bishop. At the end of my 6th year in the Assembly, my state senator, she had termed out and was going to run for something else. And so there was an open Senate seat. I decided to run for the Nevada Senate and actually ran and actually ended up winning my Senate seat running unopposed.
That's a good feeling.
Which was unheard of in that particular year, because in that year, everybody in the state, every race was highly contested. I was the only, I think it was in the legislature, I ended up being the only unopposed person in that particular race. And
so there's a good tip for you. If you want to guarantee to win an election, run unopposed, right? Like if there's a seat, because there is a lot of times you'll see, especially in the judges, you'll see, who are they running against? No one, right? And so they're guaranteed. And if you see there's a position where maybe just one person's running, maybe that's the time to jump in.
I would hope that if you're going to run for public office, that you've got a purpose why you want to do it, other than just to have a title, right? Because there are too many people that run for political office that want the title, and they'll do some things, but they're not really committed to a specific cause. And sometimes it may be, they're using it as a stepping stone, perhaps, but for something else. But for me, it's always been about, I was doing community service and I realized that I could do more by running for public office. And so that's why I did. You can't decide. There's only 2 ways to run for public office, for elected office. You either run scared or you run unopposed, because that's the only way you can run.
Right. Exactly.
And if you've never run for public office, it takes a lot of work. There's a lot of things you got to do. It's not just.
So let's talk about that, because we've talked about that offline before when we've been on the phone, and you're like, yeah, I'm knocking door to door.
Right.
And so that's something that people need to understand. And that's why we have Mo on, because not only is he a politician, but he's brave enough to go and ask people to vote for him door to door. And that takes, as you know, that's the fear of rejection. Everybody has it. But I would say that going back to your mission days, you were set up for that, no problem.
I love to talk to people, so that's not a big deal for me. And while I did do door knocking as a missionary, I didn't have to do a lot of it because I figured out other ways to meet people and have success in that respect. But still, learning to deal with those kind of issues and talking to people, and The thing is, if you really truly believe in what you're doing, then it doesn't matter to have that kind of rejection, where people, won't open their doors or.
All right. So I want to go down the rabbit hole a little bit with you, because I think we've talked about your career in politics. I know there's more to that, but I think for the time and for the limited time that we have with you, I think it's important that we get into how it's laid out on a state level here in Nevada. How do laws get passed? How do things work? Can you show us underneath the hood? I know you're a car guy, so you can relate to that. Show us how things work. Before I got involved, because of the tow business, and that's how Mo and I actually met each other, I had been researching some bills that had been passed and saw that Denis was the gentleman that was the sponsor of the bill, or whatever you want to have it called, and that he was actually making good bills for the towing industry. And I was, in the towing industry, which I am in the process of selling, as I told you before. And it was, hey, if anything good happened, it was meeting you. And like you said, you always take the positive out of whatever you're doing. And I learned a lot in that business. And politics was the number one thing that I learned in that business. And I wouldn't have met you without that business. But I want you to explain to our listening audience, and if you guys have not subscribed to our YouTube channel or our podcast channel, make sure that you do, and follow me on Instagram and follow me on TikTok. And Mo, how do they find you?
Just look for Mo Denis.
Just Google, right? Mo Denis.
Denis, one N. Twitter is Mo Denis NV, I believe.
So just Google Mo Denis on all the socials. We'll find them and we'll put them on this podcast. So if you're interested in following his career, his journey, you can find that. So let's get into how laws are made, how laws are passed, and why Nevada's education system sucks.
We'll talk about the system first, and then we'll talk about education.
Okay.
So the system works. You have a governor, of the state. You have a legislature that consists of two houses. One is in Nevada, it's called the Assembly. In other places, they call it the House of Representatives. It's Assembly, and then we have the Senate. And between the governor and the two houses, that's where the legislation comes. The third branch of government is judicial. And that'll come into play depending on what happens with the laws and things that are put in place, right? The way it works is, in your case, you had an issue, you wanted to see if we can do something about that, right? And
our issue was, just for those who don't know, I felt that the towing laws were confusing, and we wanted to make them less confusing.
Right. There's a lot of things you can do with that. Ultimately, we decided we wanted to make sure that the people that were regulating and the owners of the businesses knew what at least the new laws were, right?
Right.
And so we decided to do a bill, to do that. So, but I mean, that's how it works, especially for me, is one of my constituents will come forward and say, hey, I'm having this issue. What can we do about it? And then we'll do some research to see, what are the states done to fix that problem? What do we need to do?
What did you call that research again? I know we talked about it before, but you actually have somebody specifically that'll go do the research for you guys.
Right. We have a research division.
Okay.
And, there are individuals that their job is to do research. And when we want to pass a bill, I'll give them the idea of what I'm trying to do. And if I have materials, I'll pass it along to them. And then once I know that there's something I can do, we have what we call it in Nevada, it's called BDR, a bill draft request. Other places have different names, but it's similar. It's where you're requesting a bill. So research would then give that, all of the research that we've done, we give it to legal. Our legal division takes all that information and turns it into a legal document, a bill, written in legalese, that says, here's how we want to do this, right? And in the case of the one bill that we worked on, it was, we were going to ask the Nevada Transportation Authority to offer this training. And, that's a simple word, but, sometimes you could say something in a sentence, but it's going to take them 30 pages to describe it because of the way that the laws and the regulations are done.
Yeah, because one thing will unwind this thing, and if you say it this way, it affects this law,
right. And
if you say it this way, it affects that. Okay, I'm going to digress a little bit more. You're doing a great job explaining it. I just have one quick question that's on the way we go. So we have NAC and we have NRS. Can you break down the difference between the Nevada Revised Statute and NAC, which stands for Nevada Applied Code, right?
So the difference, though, between the NACs and the NRSs is the NRS is the law that we pass. The NEC is then the regulations.
How it's applied.
That's how they're going to apply it, right? In more regular language as opposed to the legalese. Right. So we pass the bill, they interpret it, they create the Nevada Administrative Code is what NAC stands for.
Okay.
How they're going to administer that.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense the way you just said it right there. How they're going to administer the law that they passed.
Right.
So refer directly to NAC ... whatever.
Right.
Okay, good. That's good. So you said that there's the judicial branch that comes into place if needed, but you have the House of Assembly, the Senate, and the governor.
Right. Yeah. So then what happens is we get that bill back, that bill draft request, and we get a certain number that are signed to us. So we can do however many bills. I think ours is like 21 or 22. We get free.
When you say we, who are you referring to?
The legislators.
Okay.
In the Senate, we get 21. I think they get 11 or 12 in the Assembly. Once you have that BDR, we meet as a legislature once every 2 years in the odd-numbered years, starting in the first Monday in February to the first or last, depending. We go 120 days. So however long 120 days is. So we get 120 days by the Constitution, maximum.
Nevada Constitution.
Right, the Nevada Constitution, the maximum of 120 days to pass a bill. Once the bill has a BDR number assigned to it, it goes to the floor of the Senate or floor of the Assembly, depending on where it's being introduced. It gets assigned to a committee. The committee chairman then decides if he's going to hear it or not. If he decides to hear it, they set a hearing for it.
It's just up to him?
Right.
Okay.
The chairmen are very important.
So he's got the most power, that's
right.
for sure. Okay, good.
The chairmen are very important.
Don't piss him off.
Right.
Okay.
If you want to get something done, you definitely don't want to get a chairman mad at you because they could just stick it in their desk and never take it out.
Wow.
And
I just learned something today.
And that happens on bills too. If they have something they just don't like.
100%, yeah.
Or something that they know is just absolutely not going to go anywhere and they don't want to waste time on it, they just will never introduce it.
Or if they have somebody they just don't like and they don't want to deal with them.
Could be.
Yeah.
So, but if it gets a hearing, then you're gonna have a hearing with the committee. They're gonna ask the floor. What the floor does is assigns it. That it's read the first time. In Nevada, it has to be read 3 times before it could actually become a law, and it has to be read 3 times in each house and passed. And so you take it to the committee. You hear it. If the chair decides that he wants to pass it, then he'll bring it up for a vote. He might hear it and decide he doesn't want to, bring it up. So you may never hear it again. And of course, once you hear a bill, you might see something that just doesn't make sense. So you're going to amend it. You're going to try to fix it, change things, and that happens all the time.
What do they call that? They call that like the law might come in looking one way, and then they attach a bunch of stuff to it, and it doesn't look anything like it was when it started, right?
Right. Yeah. Sometimes what'll happen is that you'll start with one bill, and you might cut it in half because half of it you don't want to do. Or you might completely gut it and put new language in there. It still has to follow.
Is that called a Trojan horse?
No. No, I just call it gut and replace.
Okay.
But what happens is when they do that, they still have to follow. It still has to be in the same part of the statutes.
Right.
So you can't just gut it that particular one and just put whatever you want.
Okay, good.
And so there is that. Although there are other places that you can do that, but not there in the committee. If you get it out of committee and it passes, it goes back to the floor. In my case, the Senate floor. It has to be heard a second time. If there's any amendments that were made in committee, the amendments have to be with it, have to be approved. And then it goes for a third reading. After the third reading, it gets sent to the other house. And then it starts the same process over again. They have to assign it to a committee. The chairman has to accept it, has to decide to hear it, and they have to pass it out. It has to be heard 3 times. And if that happens, then it comes back to the House of Origin. The House of Origin then sends it to the governor. The governor then decides if he's going to pass it or if he's going to veto it. And if he decides to sign it, it becomes law.
Okay, one question. And that is probably the best explanation that I've ever heard. So thank you very much. Because politics is super complicated, and you just explained that very easily. Now, can the governor add anything to the bill?
He cannot.
So he can he has 2 choices, yes or no.
Or there's a third choice. The third choice is to do nothing and let the time lapse. There's a period of time, and he has up to 10 days. So there's a certain number of days that he has to sign it. He could choose to not do anything, and if he doesn't sign it, it becomes law. If he does sign it, it becomes law. If he decides to veto it, then it doesn't become
It's dead.
law.
It's to the next 2 years. It's dead.
Right. Well, it depends on when it happens. But if it's after the session is over and he vetoes it, it comes back to the legislature in the next session. They could choose with a 2/3 vote to override a veto.
What I'm taking away from this whole conversation that I'm having right now, knowledge is power.
Right. Understanding the process is very important.
Right. I learned more talking to you about politics than I've ever learned. This is the whole point of this show, is to educate people on things. And so because we have a lack of time, I want to ask you one fundamental question that's the audience is going to care about. And that is, do laws affect real estate values?
Yes, they do. Right. We pass laws and we pass budgets, right, and which includes taxes and other things. Those things can impact. If we don't pass enough of a budget to do infrastructure, for example, businesses can't function if people can't get to their business because the roads or the bridges or whatever it is that you need. I mean, electricity. I mean, all those things. Just about anything that you do each and every day in your life is impacted by some type of legislation. And if you don't have the right pieces in place, it's very difficult for business to be successful.
If the Senate said, you know what, we need to pass a law that's going to require every homeowner have this type of insurance, because we'll use FEMA as an example, even though we're in Nevada, because there's too much dust in Nevada, and we feel like there should be dust insurance.
Right.
Would that affect the values of real estate?
Well, yeah, because, you got to now have an additional cost associated with that, right? And then you have to monitor it and all that other stuff. So I'm sure there's going to be costs to businesses.
And you would know that because A, you're a politician, and B, you're also a licensed real estate agent, right?
Right, that's true.
Mo, because we're out of time, I am so grateful that you, sung with us. That's you made my day, okay? We're going to have to roll that out as our promo for the whole video when we go out, because it's going to be great. If they want to donate to your campaign because they can realize that you're a genuine guy that cares, and just for people who know, Mo is a guy who cares. Whether you're Republican, whether you're Democrat, I want to understand that we're all human beings. If we're in Nevada, we're all Nevadans. If we're in wherever we're at, you need to forget about the party that you're dealing with. Get to know the individual, because that is who is behind it. The party is the news. The news is pushing that agenda. But Mo, anytime he comes up for anything, I'm voting for Mo. And I think that if you care about your local politics, your local organization, you need to find guys like Mo who care and have put their money where their mouth is, their life where their mouth is, and live where their district is. And I guess the one question I'm going to leave you with to leave our audience with is, most of our audience is, like I told you, male, about 65%, and 35% female, and they're between the ages of 18 to 45, and they are on this channel because they're looking to get started investing in businesses. They're looking to be entrepreneurs. What advice do you have for a young person in today's world that you could leave them with at the end of this podcast that they can just think about?
A couple things. One, relationships. When it comes to politics, it's just getting to know people so that when you call them and say, hey, I have this issue, that elected official is going to pay attention because they know you, right? Because we get thousands of emails from people complaining about all kinds of things. But the ones that we pay attention to the most are the ones, somebody that we know, right? Because we've met them and we've gotten to know them. The relationship is very important. The other thing is, don't always believe everything that you read. There's always more to the story, and you really need to try to figure out both sides of an issue. I mean, as a legislator, that's one thing that I have always tried to do. If somebody comes to me and say, oh, yeah, the world's coming to an end, and then I go talk to somebody else and say, oh, no, we're in great time. So then I have to try to find where the truth really is, right? Staying educated on issues, and do your own work. I mean, because we're seeing a lot of information that people put out there now. You can do anything you want on the internet, right? You can make videos that don't even of something that didn't even exist.
Happen, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so
we're gonna put you on Mars after this video. You'll be singing on Mars.
So if somebody tells you something, you don't have to just take their word for it. I mean, if you have a relationship with somebody and you really trust them, that's different, because we have to do that in politics too, because you can't know every little thing. So you have to know who you can trust, right? So learn who you can trust, learn the information, learn to challenge. If somebody says this and this is why, then either ask them, well, where did you get that from? or look it up, and even if they tell you, because, on such and such a report, go look up the report, see if they're telling you the truth. Because then that's one way you
trust and verify.
Right, exactly. Trust but verify. And that, I think those two things, and just keeping it in the loop of what's going on, it's real easy to just get busy with your business and do all that and not pay any attention. But somewhere along the way, there's something's going to happen that you're going to need.
Towing.
You're going to need some help, and you're going to want to understand how it works. And, it's kind of late if you haven't created those relationships and don't know the issues, because, most legislatures don't meet all the time. Ours meets every other year. Most legislatures meet at least once a year for a few months. But, it's not like you can just say, hey, I got a problem, and they can fix it right then.
So what you're saying and what I hear is relationships are the foundation for success.
Right.
Build relationships, because you can't build them when you need them,
right.
And you better already have them.
Right.
Okay. Well, Mo, those are wise words of wisdom. We appreciate you gracing us with your presence, with you educating our listening audience with all of that wonderful advice about how the legislative process works in Nevada. And thank you for singing. That was awesome.
Okay.
And I enjoyed it, and I'm going to bring it back. And make sure that you guys check out Mo Denis. Search him on Twitter, search him on Instagram, search him wherever he's at. I'm sure he's got people doing that for him. And definitely donate to Mo Denis. Are you running for anything?
Actually, I'm not running for anything right now. I'm termed out.
Save your money.
Yeah, so save it, and,
he might have some recommendations where you could put it on the next time we have him on.
Yeah, so we'll have to do some beatboxing next time and talk about education.
All right, so what we have to look forward next time is beatboxing and education with Mo Denis. Thanks for thanks for coming.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
All right, thanks, Mo. Appreciate it.
Thanks.